Before I ask you about the budget expectations, I just wanted your thoughts on what's happening on the ground. The last we heard is that the retail data has stabilized a bit. I mean, inventory levels have come down, especially in passenger vehicles. But you tell us, what is the situation at the moment?
Inventory levels, as you rightly said, in passenger vehicles have come down, not to the comfortable level that we want, but at least the downward trajectory has started. But two-wheeler continues to be a worry for the dealers, and it still remains so. It's quite a bit high as far as dealer inventory goes.
Okay, Ashish, it'll really help if you give us some indicative numbers as well. For passenger cars, what is the kind of inventory timeline right now? How many days inventory is the average?
So at the start of June, we had about 40 to 45 days of inventory. The normal inventory earlier used to be about a month, which we are now advocating post GST and the speed of logistics improving should be 3 weeks, which is 21 days. But even if you look at 30 days against that, we today have inventory at 40 to 45 days for passenger vehicles. For two-wheelers, that's at about 60 days. So two-wheelers is 2 months of inventory. And in some geographies a bit higher also.
Okay, so two-wheeler inventory levels are still high at 60 days. What about dealer financing? There was this whole panic about how funding has completely dried up, and a lot of dealerships are shutting down, etc. What's the ground check at the moment?
So I won't say it's completely dried out, but yes, overall the economy is going through a downturn, and liquidity, as you know, is a concern for the past 7 to 8 months. So obviously easy liquidity which was available to dealerships for getting stocks is becoming much more stringent. We are required to give higher collateral norms. But I think it is a part of the overall banking sector becoming cautious, not just with auto. Of course, auto is facing the brunt because immediate results can be seen. When funding dry up, stock becomes a burden for us. And that is why we are requesting the industry to come down in their stocking norms, looking at the way the funding is becoming stricter for auto dealers and overall for the industry.
Now, Ashish, the question is, what would you like in terms of a helping hand from the government? OEMs have been arguing for a duty cut, and that's quite understandable. But I've heard two arguments. One is that this NBFC financing crisis led to sort of, the initial slowdown. The second argument, it's not just NBFC crisis. I mean, there's a real reason, and whatever the reason is, that people are not buying too many cars now. Just your thoughts on how sort of this can play out in the months to come.
So I would say NBFC was one of the triggers during the festive season when this slowdown actually started. Insurance costs going higher, fuel costs, and NBFC overall liquidity also, which still continues to be tight. I don't think the argument that car buying is going down is something which is there for across the country. Yes, in metro cities we can see some trends, especially in the millennials, that they are going in for car sharing or something where ownership is becoming an issue with them. But it's not such a big trend that it should worry auto dealers or the auto industry immediately. Yes, in the near future, if this trend continues, it is a problem. With regards to GST rate cut, we've also requested for the same, and there's a logic behind that. If you look at the past 6-8 months, we have been facing a lot of regulatory norms which are changing, and for the better. The industry is totally in support of it, whether it is related to safety issues or whether it is related to the emission norms which are coming. But it's a quantum jump in the standards that India was maintaining and we want to maintain now. So with all this, the cost is going up quite a lot. It is required for the country and the society. But with that, we also have to see that auto is still the highest taxed under the GST regime. We have passenger vehicles starting at 29% going up to 50%. So what we've requested the government is that the overall affordability of product, if it goes up, the industry will face a brunt in terms of the level of growth that it was getting. And therefore the taxes should be regulated to ensure that the growth continues. See, auto sector today still contributes 7 to 8% of the GDP and 41% of the manufacturing GDP. So I think it's necessary for the government also to ensure that this sector continues to grow, and therefore we've requested for a regulation in GST, just like all the industry has.
Okay, I'm going to come back to your budget expectations. Before that, how have sales been in the month of June in passenger vehicles as well as in two-wheelers? Any improvement compared to what we saw in April and May?
Very slight. We actually were hoping for a good improvement because inquiry levels had started picking up. But unfortunately, the monsoon got delayed, and in tier 2, 3 towns, that is a very, very important positive trigger. But it's just picked up now, and we expect the monsoon to be normal. So right now, I cannot say whether the month will end on a positive note. But I think the inquiry levels have picked up, so some hope for us there.
Okay, and very quickly, if you had to give us the 2 top expectations from the budget this time, I mean, you spoke about GST being brought down, etc. But what would the, what would top your wish list? So, 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, so for we've actually put out our request in 2 parts. One is specific dealer issues. So for dealer issues, we have requested that auto dealers be covered under the MSME Act. Through a circular in 2017, specifically auto dealers were kept out of it despite having all qualifications under the MSME qualifications. So we have requested the Finance Minister to ensure that auto dealers are also included in that. That is our first wish list. Second, most important that we would like to see is GST rates for used cars to come down to 5%, which currently are 12 to 18%. I think this will help the industry become much more formal, and it will also increase the revenues of the government. There are other requests which we have put out, but the most 2 important right now for auto dealers would be this. As an industry, being part of the auto industry, and with growth coming down, the first effect comes to auto dealers. We've already discussed the GST rates which need to be regulated, looking at the overall cost going up of automobile. And the second main important point which we have put out is an attractive scrappage policy, or rather an attractive incentive to be offered whenever the government rolls out a scrappage policy, especially if it is a voluntary one. Because this will be the first time that we roll out a scrappage policy on a national basis, and if it's not attractive enough, it will not be a success. So we've requested the government to do that. It will also pave a way in the future for a mandatory policy, which in a growing country like India, it is definitely a requirement and has worked everywhere globally. So these are the 2 industry concerns which we have put out, and 2 main dealer concerns that we've put out.